And then also test your chemical exposure or your toxic load. That's a big one nowadays because our environment is more polluted than it's ever been. So each of us have a different sort of ability to withstand and hold on to toxins. You and I are probably different there. We need to understand what your threshold is.
So I'm feeling really good.
Okay.
Because I had done a saliva test for my naturopath doctor.
Okay.
And maybe you will agree.
Yes.
That's at the bottom
Okay,
there.
got
It's
it.
2 different months because I did it wrong the first time.
All right.
I didn't do the whole day. I just did the morning and then I had to redo it.
All right, you got to catch me up.
Yes. So she had me start taking DHEA,
Okay.
which is like changing my life.
How?
Holy crap. I feel more normal again. I'm not needing caffeine. I can have 1 cup of coffee in the morning and I'm fine. Like I was so energy depleted. I didn't understand how energy depleted I was. So I started with like 0.5 because I'm really sensitive. So I
Right.
just slowly worked my way up and I've been on it for probably a month. Oh my God.
You feel better?
Yeah, I feel so much better.
so glad.
Like in a way that I kind of just thought that's what life was now. Why? This is what I do. Like all I do is pay attention to how I'm feeling. But I had felt like that for so long. I didn't know that I could feel better. That has really, really helped me. What are your thoughts? What do you feel?
Well, I'm so happy that you're feeling better.
Great.
I can't stress enough how important it is to track and understand what's going on with you because you are repeating back to me exactly what people say to me in the exam room all the time, that they don't feel good. They thought that this was normal. They're trying to quote unquote power through, right? Those are like my favorite lines that I hear over and over again. And just one change, right?
One.
Just the DHEA
Yeah.
has made such a difference for you.
Absolutely.
And I was talking about this earlier today, and I was talking about how the body is like a set of dominoes. You make one change, and so many different other areas of the body are impacted and affected, both in a good way and in a bad way, right? So I think that's such a testament to how this stuff doesn't have to be hard or difficult or time consuming. You just have to get the information, right? I really think that's the message that we want to put out there.
Right. Yeah. So just to catch up the audience, because I started just jabbering because I was so excited to sit with you. The last time you were here, I told you I was having tests done with my existing doctor.
Right.
Then I also did tests with you, which you're going to explain
Yes,
to me
we'll
because I
talk
don't know
about that.
anything about those.
Okay.
The one with my doctor was saliva. The one with you was blood work.
Right.
And I think maybe urine too. I can't remember all the things that we did. But with her, and maybe you look at that and see something different, she was saying that I think my cortisol in the morning was lower than it should be. So she's like, when I'm looking at this, my guess is that you wake up feeling tired, like you're not awake. And I was like, yes. I used to bounce out of bed 4:35 a.m. Now I'm like really dragging. And I thought, and by dragging, I mean like it's 6 o'clock, it's 6:30, it's 7.
Right.
I got little kids. That's
Right.
not a thing that can happen. And even after I'm awake, I can't wake up. Like I wasn't really waking up feeling awake in my brain until midday. And I'm doing everything I can think of to make this feel better. But I just thought, maybe I'm exhausted. Like last year was a really hard year. Like maybe I just need more self-care. This one little thing, which was try this supplement and see how it feels. This one little thing, not only do I have more energy during the day, and it's not like a crazy energy. It's not like I just did 4 shots of espresso. I just feel
Better.
awake. I feel better.
Yeah.
And that is lasting into the evening. So I feel I have more energy to like make dinner, to do bedtime routines, to do things where when I don't have that energy, I'm like, I'm a terrible mom. I'm a terrible human. Like, why don't I want to make spaghetti for them right now? And I can't, it's just, I'm blown away.
This is why I think I do what I do, because you made one change.
One change.
And you feel differently.
Yes.
But not only do you feel differently, you're able to do differently.
Yes.
Right? For your family and for, everything else that you have going on. This is what I talk about when I talk about really, this is a journey up. It's not a journey down. It's a journey into really understanding what your body needs, because when we are lacking things, and I'm just looking still at your December saliva test, but when we are lacking whether it's hormones or nutrients or whatever it is, then we do get more negative, right? There's a lot more of sort of that shame and guilt and beating ourselves down that starts to play into the picture. So all this stuff brings us up, right? So on your original, just to talk about this for just a moment, it's interesting to look at. You were very low in DHEA. You were very low in cortisol, the morning cortisol. Those are signs of adrenal fatigue.
Yeah.
If you're coming off of a bad year, or incredibly stressful events, the body, again, during the time of stress, we all try to get through it and do what we're supposed to do, right? But at some point, the body is going to catch up to that. And so this to me looks like stage 1 adrenal fatigue for sure. So you started DHEA, you're feeling better. Did you do anything else differently?
Well, so I also told her, shout out to Dr. Brush, I told her that I was running a marathon, which I did on Sunday. And I said, so I was like,
gotcha.
hey, when I talked to Dr. Taz, she mentioned that there were things that you could do to better support yourself when you do something like that. Is there anything you'd recommend? So she's like, oh, I'm so glad you told me. I'm also going to have you take, it was some kind of adrenal support, like ADR or I can't remember.
Yeah.
I could show you in the house. But essentially she said, it's amazing that you run marathons. It's a good stress, but your body will still perceive it as stress.
Correct.
So you just need a little something extra. And I have to say, I had the best mood running a long distance race I've ever had in 10 years.
That's amazing.
I was so happy. I was just like vibing, looking at things. I didn't run 100 miles an hour.
Yeah.
I felt so good when it was, I felt like it's more sustained energy. It just felt
when was
better.
that marathon?
On Sunday.
Oh, this past
like
Sunday.
4 days ago.
Okay, got it. Okay, I was curious because it's always interesting to see what your body's doing because then when I look at the next one that you did, this is February. So what happened between December and February? Did anything significant happen?
My birthday, like good things or bad things?
Either. Anything major, I guess.
Not that, Jack, can you think of any? No, I think it was pretty
good?
regular.
Okay.
The holidays, that's not true. The holidays were pretty stressful. Like, I feel like we traveled a ton. It was the first holiday season that my kids had without their dad, which was really a lot for us to hold. So, yeah, there was a lot in that. And that's a good point. It's funny until I sit with someone and they're like, what happened? Or how are you feeling? I'm like, nothing. And then after a minute, I'm like, actually, that was pretty hard.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because in December, before you started DHEA, your DHEA was low, your cortisol was low in the morning. You get to February, now you've been on DHEA, your morning...
I hadn't yet. I just started that.
You just started it. Okay, got it. So this is not reflective of you being on anything. Okay.
Correct.
So by the time we get to February, your cortisol in the morning is not as crashed out as it was in December, but you're still in adrenal fatigue because what's happening here, and this is the reason, that we have to have labs and numbers to look at because we get a better understanding of what's going on with you. Now, I do a lot of symptom checklists and things like that are helpful, but you're still in adrenal fatigue because now, although your morning cortisol has improved, it's staying high as you go into the evening. And remember, cortisol has that natural rhythm where it should be high in the morning and then it should come down gradually, but you're improving because adrenal fatigue, where you're crashed out, you've moved out of that stage 3, stage 4 adrenal fatigue, probably into stage 2 by February, where you're no longer crashed out completely, but your rhythm is still flipped, right? We want the morning to be high. We want the evening to be low. So this is about stage 2. So what I see as we move from December going into February is that you're moving from severe adrenal fatigue to maybe a milder to moderate version.
Cool.
Right? And now you've started DHEA.
Yeah.
So we'll see sort of what progression that you have over that. And then I know we have more to go over too. But again, I think this is the reason why. Now, the only other thing from your original, from the December labs, is that the progesterone levels are okay. But if you looked at the progesterone to estrogen ratio, that was really low. And I think you told me last time too, if I remember correctly, that you historically are low progesterone. Is that right?
Estrogen dominant.
Estrogen dominant.
Yeah, if that means
so this
the same
pattern
thing.
makes you estrogen dominant when you don't really have enough progesterone in comparison to the estrogen that you have, or if you are storing a lot of estrogen. Those are the two patterns of estrogen dominance. So we can see that here too.
Okay.
That just to remind you as well, when there is adrenal fatigue and cortisol is crashing, progesterone is usually going down with it. Remember, we talked about those hormone shifts, and one of the things that I really wanted women to understand was that, even in your 20s and 30s, those two shifts, we call them the hustlers and the superstars, like those particular groups of women, they are starting to see the early signs of this, where cortisol is dropping, DHEA is dropping, and progesterone is dropping. And then that translates into not being able to sleep, getting more anxious, blood sugar instability, like getting hangry, all of these different, not being able to focus. Like there's so many symptoms associated just with this. And then traditionally what will happen is that you don't know that this is happening, right? You don't know that you're having these hormone shifts, but you'll go in and you'll be diagnosed with anxiety or depression or stress or some of these other things, when in actuality, as you've experienced yourself, it's a hormone shift, So that's what I learned about you with just these two particular things. Do you have any questions for me about these?
That's right on. That feels accurate.
Awesome. Do you want to jump into the other
so
rows?
excited
Okay,
about
got
this.
it. All right.
So again, just to guide listeners through, y'all sent or you sent me labs that I had to get done.
Right.
I got blood work done. Yep. They took 75 vials of
blood.
No. I cannot even believe. No, it was so funny.
Yeah.
I was like, the girl rolled out all the tubes, and I'm not good with blood work, but I love the results.
Right.
So I'm like, oh.
Right.
So I always look away and try and focus on something. And she was like, are you? I'm like, I'm fine. Just keep on trucking. Just let me look outside at the birds.
Did you do okay with it?
Yeah, I did
Okay,
fine.
good.
Yeah, I was totally fine. I just hate the feeling of it.
Well, and just to qualify that too, we wanted to do a deep dive on you. It doesn't have to be that many vials every time, so.
It's I think it's worth it. It doesn't, as soon as the needle's out, it's the needle.
I know.
As soon as that's done, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But it was just that moment. But got it done. They sent the results, but obviously I can't read.
Right.
I mean, I don't know what any of that says, so I'm so excited.
I am so happy to go over these with you, but I do want to help everyone understand why we do blood versus doing saliva. So in practice, we do both, honestly. But the advantage of doing a LabCorp panel is that I can run this and usually get it through your insurance, and you're not always having to pay out of pocket, right? And there are a lot more LabCorp, and you probably experience with the saliva too. There's a little bit of you got to get the kit, collect the kit, send the kit. This usually you walk into a LabCorp. So as we all try to innovate on how to make this process easier and easier, sometimes it's easier to actually track LabCorp. Now, if you can do both, that's great. So that's the reason why we chose to do a blood panel on you versus the saliva panels, because I knew you had done them, and these are pretty accurate too.
And I would say for anyone listening, if I had to choose, the blood work is actually way more convenient.
Is it?
I know
Okay.
that sounds funny, but the saliva you have to do all day long.
Yeah.
And you can't eat for 2 hours before. And as weird as it sounds, it actually is hard to get that much saliva in a tube.
Right.
So for what it's worth, blood took 10 minutes and the saliva took the entire day plus special
to
restrictions.
Get it done.
So,
yeah. It is, it's inconvenient. And the difference in the results, saliva and urine, if you do any of the urine hormone tests, any of those are showing stored values, right? And they're showing a lot of metabolites, like how the body's processing any of these hormones. So in practice at Center Spring, it's valuable information, especially the first visit, maybe when we're really trying to understand the patient, who are you and what's your body doing with all this stuff. But because of how wonky and a little bit cumbersome it is, we don't necessarily keep doing it, at every single follow-up and every single appointment thereafter. But let's talk about your LabCorp stuff.
And now, can I say, is it helpful to hear symptoms first, or it's helpful for you to read this and say here's what I'm seeing, and then I can confirm?
Well, why don't you tell me your symptoms?
Okay.
It's always helpful. I already have some, because I'm not going to lie, I peeked to this
of
before
course,
coming over here.
Of course.
So I already have some thoughts, but go ahead and tell me your symptoms and we're going to try to match them.
The one which I didn't even really give myself permission to feel was the lack of it, the low energy thing, which we already spoke about. The big one that I've noticed in the last 9 months is sex drive. Sorry, Jack. At this point, you've heard about everything in my life, but that's funny.
Yeah.
Just a much lower sex drive. And it's the weirdest thing in the world, that one of the weirdest things I've ever experienced. I can look at my boyfriend and he's so sexy. And I'm just like, holy God, he's so beautiful.
Yeah.
What an amazing, but like nothing's
happening.
Nothing's happening. She's closed for business. She is uninterested. It's so sad. It's like almost like mourning this thing. So that's a big one that I've noticed in the last 9 months. And then this was also something I told Dr. Brush, and I don't know if it's the energy thing, but for the first time in my life, like, the word that I would use is like apathy, like just like, I don't care. And that is not
you
me at all. I care too much, but like, I don't care. I like really have a hard time motivating for things that my true self, like I don't need motivation. So for me to just be like, I don't, cool. We do it. We don't, like, it's, that is a really weird, feels like not my personality. Now, a cool thing that I've felt since probably like last 6 months or whatever is my anxiety is like, doesn't exist. So I have for a very, very, very long time been on holy basil.
Yeah, I love holy basil.
Love holy basil, and I like recommend it to everybody. But I just sort of started getting the feeling like, I don't know if I need this anymore. I've been on this for probably 10 years. I don't know if I need this anymore. And I kind of out of the blue just thought I would love to see if I could do okay without taking anything. For people who don't know, it's it's an adaptogen that helps with when you have anxiety. When I first stopped taking it, I had a couple weeks where it would kind of like flare up. And I know this is going to sound cheesy, but I just did breath work. And everybody's been talking about box breathing forever. And I finally just did it, and it really worked.
Amazing.
And there was something like almost like a flip switched in my mind where I was like, oh, this really is a pattern that I am inside of, so much so that when I break the thought pattern, the anxiety dissipates. It's almost like I have a habit of anxiety, if that makes sense. So haven't had to take anything. Every once in a while, have a little anxiety show up, do some breath work, and it's fine. So that's a beautiful thing that's happened. I don't know if that's hormones or me just getting older and kind of not worrying so much. But those are the big kind of shifts
that you've had. So libido, I mean, both of those are very important. And I don't want to gloss over either one of them. First of all, a change in libido is something a lot of women don't like to talk about, but it's rampant and it's happening. And there's some of those downward shifts in libido that are expected, right? Like postpartum, little kids, that is normal to have that downshift in libido. And some of it, I think, is nature kind of conserving our energy. So we focus for a period of time on the kids until we pull out of that, right? But if you've reestablished your normal libido after having children, all of that other stuff, and your libido is going downhill, that is a symptom. That is a symptom of a hormone shift. And libido in women is interesting and complicated. It's part emotional, it's part hormones, but it's massively energetic. Where if we've already said you're in adrenal fatigue, right? If you're crashed out or your cortisol levels are not where they're going to be, that's probably one of the earliest things to get sacrificed, honestly. So some of it may be wrapped in that. Now, secondly, anxiety that you brought up and having maybe heart palpitations or whatever the symptoms are, they're different, for everybody. But that feeling of like not being in control or being outside your body is a very real one. Definitely triggered by hormone shifts, definitely very present in stages of adrenal fatigue. In fact, people in that stage 3, stage 4 that we were just talking about that you were in and you're kind of moving out of, definitely anxiety is a massive part of that whole diagnosis, and trying to manage that is huge. I love holy basil. We know the adrenal adaptogens really help to manage that response. For some women that's not enough and we need to step it on up to something else. And then there are women that need medications too. But before I ever reach for the prescription pad, I want to look at your hormones and understand. Now I'm curious, after starting DHEA, has the anxiety toned down at all?
Well, I haven't been feeling anxiety
as much.
So I didn't,
okay.
So I haven't really, I would say like the last, kind of like this year, I don't know. I made this sort of conscious decision, like, I think I'm okay. And maybe it was, because this is something I have battled against for 15 years.
Yeah.
And so I feel like maybe it was making peace with it that, okay, if you do have some anxiety, we'll breathe through it. If you need, this is always here. If you need to go back, if you need to take something. And it was almost like not having fear around it.
Yep.
Just helped me to be like, all right, cool.
I got it.
So
Yeah.
the anxiety I'm not feeling, I was a little nervous with DHEA just because anything that is going to give you more energy, I'm always nervous, could make me feel kind of buzzy or anxious. But I got the DHEA in 5 milligram dosage, and I just started with 5. And then when I didn't feel anything bad, I went to 10, and then I went to 15. So I didn't
You went slowly.
I went
through
very
it,
slowly.
which is really good advice for everybody listening, because we're all such a delicate balance and we all respond to different things. So starting low and slow, I always, tell my patients, you may not feel anything and that's okay, but we want to start at the lowest dose possible and we'll work our way back up, But going back to even talking about blood work, one other thought I had that I wanted to make sure we talked about, a lot of people ask me, should I do these labs on day 3 or should I do them on day 17 or day 21? And if we are trying to do labs to time you for fertility purposes or things like that, those things are really important. But the reason I don't make people stick to that is that we're testing enough metabolites in here that we have a decent understanding of what the whole hormone picture is. So yes, your estrogen and progesterone levels fluctuate on blood work, absolutely. But when you look at all the individual metabolites that we'll call out in just a minute, that's when you get a better understanding of what the entire hormone pattern is doing all throughout the month. Similar to doing saliva or urine as well. Okay. All right. So some of these numbers you probably recognize. The first thing that jumped out at me as I was kind of scrolling down through your numbers. So, some of the stuff you might have had tested before, right? Nothing fancy, nothing unusual, but your magnesium is too low.
Low.
Yes.
Whoa, I take magnesium every day.
I think you need more, or
crazy.
you might need a different form. Magnesium's really important for bringing cortisol down, for supporting progesterone, and for helping anxiety.
Okay.
So we might want to look later at the form and the type that you're taking and see if you're really on the right type and the right amount for you.
Good to know.
But you wouldn't have caught that because the conventional standards for this magnesium are 3.7 to 7. You're at 4.3. So you're, again, this quote unquote normal that I hear about all the time. Really, women should be optimizing this level to above 5. And when they don't, that's when we start to see more of these symptoms. Okay. So that was the first one that I saw when I was looking. A lot of the other numbers, like your cholesterol and things like that, look good. Now, the only thing with cholesterol, your LDL was a little bit high. Do you run high? Is your family...
I don't actually know what that is, LDL.
LDL is a form of cholesterol produced by the liver. It's typically more genetic in kind of its origin.
I'll ask. I've never heard that before, but it might just be because I haven't heard my parents talk about it.
So again, how old are you, Rachel?
41.
41. Okay. So as a woman in her 40s, like those are numbers to track, right? Because heart disease is something that we need to take seriously in women as well. We are seeing signs of heart disease younger and younger, and it is also the number one cause of death for women too, right? So we'll track these numbers. If they continue to go up and they're not stabilizing, then we go into a deeper dive when it comes to your heart health, which is also influenced by many of these other factors like stress, like hormones, like, all of it. So that was the other thing. I thought your thyroid actually looked pretty good. I do want to keep an eye on it because so here again is something for everyone to be aware of. Thyroid is normal. Your TSH, which is the main way most people gauge your thyroid, it actually looks good. But when we talk about checking your hormones and understanding hormone shifts, because it's not just about the level, it's also about patterns and trends. The trend that I'd be curious for you moving forward is to make sure this T4 and this T3 aren't dropping any further. You're kind of low, you're hugging the ends of normal there. Okay. So as a woman who's dealing with adrenal fatigue and coming out of it, these numbers might bump up on their own as you come out of adrenal fatigue. But as an athlete, if you're going to do a lot of marathons, if you continue to have significant stressors, then the numbers are going to go the other way. They're going to get lower and lower. So this is where I would step in and be like, okay, we're dropping again. We might need a little bit of thyroid hormone because, again, you're in a stressful situation. We already know you're in adrenal fatigue. We've got to balance this out. Okay. So that's what I see there. Now, these testosterone numbers are interesting because I actually think they skew high. But
Really?
you are telling me you have no libido.
Yeah.
So this is why we don't want to wrap libido up in the conversation around testosterone alone. All right. Because I actually think you're having an issue metabolizing testosterone, but you're not having hair loss or acne or any of those type of symptoms.
No.
Okay. I see this again a little bit later. There's a hormone metabolite of testosterone called DHT, which is starting to get high on you as well.
Okay.
And typically the symptoms of that are going to be anxiety. If DHT and some of these androgens get too high, it's anxiety, it's hair loss, it's acne. Those are the things we typically look for.
Okay.
We'll decide in a minute how much of this we're going to problem solve and how much we're going to like leave alone and let one thing have some time before we do the next. All right. This other pattern is repeated from your saliva. I see it in here as well. Low progesterone. You're definitely low. So symptoms of low progesterone are going to be having shorter periods, having heavier periods.
Yes.
Those are some of the symptoms of
Absolutely.
low progesterone. The 3 to 4 o'clock wake up that so many women talk about, that's a low progesterone symptom as well. And then anxiety is too.
Okay.
So if I was problem solving your anxiety, I would, in addition to your DHEA, optimize your magnesium and maybe even start you on a tiny bit of progesterone if you could time your anxiety to those last few weeks of your cycle. If you can't, then we may just do progesterone 2 or 3 days a week to optimize this number a little bit better. But sometimes that just dials it down, right? Now, there are many patients where that's still not enough, and we have to move on into the toolbox and just go to the next option. But those are things that I'm seeing in your blood work today. Your DHEA on this lab, I don't know how long you were on it before doing these labs.
I wasn't.
You
on
weren't
it.
on it
Yeah.
here. So this is the difference between saliva and blood. Here it looks normal. Saliva, it was definitely off and low. So that's why sometimes it's good to occasionally do the other testing to get an idea of what's going on. Your estradiol and estrone. So estrone, I talk a lot about dirty hormones in the book. These are hormone metabolites that don't serve us well. They kind of go the wrong way. They don't do what they're supposed to do. Your estrone is one of them. That number actually looks okay. That looks good. DHT is the other one. That one's actually high. It's coming up in just a minute.
Okay.
But your estrone looked okay, and your estradiol, which is your circulating levels of estrogen, don't look that bad.
Okay.
And your estrogen in your saliva test didn't look bad.
Okay.
So your estrogen dominance is the result of low progesterone, right?
That makes sense.
So you need a completely different protocol than someone whose estrogen dominance is because of stored estrogen.
Interesting.
Totally
Okay.
different. Okay. So so that's what we learn about you here. Let's see if there's anything else. Liver's actually looking good. Your CBC, which many people get checked, looks really great too. Prolactin, insulin, those numbers look good. Now, though, we hit the autoimmune markers. And I check some of these inflammation markers at least yearly on my patients. But your ANA is positive.
Yeah, what does that mean?
That puts you sort of in this. ANA is an anti-nuclear antibody. It's a screening test for autoimmune disease. Okay. You were negative on a previous draw. You flipped to positive on this one. And then there's a pattern that they're identifying that goes with some different autoimmune diseases. Some of them include Sjogren's, lupus, those type of things. This is not diagnostic for any of those. This is telling us, hey, let's watch out for this. She's kind of falling in that spectrum. What are we doing about inflammation? What is your protocol in terms of diet, gut work, some of those type of things?
Yeah.
And then tracking and marking these, through the years. And there's no family history of anything autoimmune that you can remember.
Not that I know of. Inflammation, though, that really tracks with me. I probably, like 6 weeks ago, I can't even remember exactly when, stopped eating gluten.
Okay.
So that has really, really helped.
Yeah.
Just like I feel so much better in all
Good.
the ways.
I'm so proud of you.
Every once in a while, like a birthday or something,
Right,
like
of
I have
course.
cake, whatever.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
for the most part, and the night before the marathon, I did have pasta.
Okay. There we go.
But that has really helped me feel so much better. So the idea of being inflamed, I would really identify with that before I made that change.
Okay. So this is one we would track.
Yeah.
Right. If it's consistently positive, lab draw to lab draw to lab draw, then we do a deeper dive. We do autoimmune marker testing. There's a test we do in practice called the AVISE test. It's a way of diving in more, with more thoroughness to see if that's your story or not. But having said that, I would say about 60 to 70% of autoimmune disease is reversible. period. You don't have a diagnosis.
Yeah.
But for anyone out there listening who's like, wait, I've got lupus, I've got this, I've got that. A lot of it is reversible when you take the anti-inflammatory approach. Now, if you're entering the conversation way late, right? You've already had some joint damage or gut damage or things like that. That gets a little bit more challenging. But anything you can do to lower the inflammatory load in your body is going to serve you well and lower your need for medications long run.
Great.
Okay. All right. Let's keep going here. So another one was the SED rate. That's another inflammation marker. Just wanted to call it out because it's one that I do think everyone should be checking yearly. Looks great on you. We tested for Candida, which is an overgrowth of yeast in the gut. That one looked good. But then we get to this DHT business. So DHT, I've mentioned a couple of times. Your level is now at 12. I really want it under 10 anytime I go to check it. Again, you're not having symptoms unless the anxiety is a part of this. But symptoms historically are, the acne, the hair loss, scalp hair loss, facial hair, body hair. Those are usually your symptoms. Yeah. And then pregnenolone is one of those metabolites. It's a metabolite of progesterone. It's also low. So this is how I can kind of infer that no matter where you are in your cycle, you're low progesterone.
Yeah.
Pregnenolone, when it drops, gives you brain fog.
Yes.
Trouble focusing, brain fog. We've got teenagers walking around in this pattern as well. And then they get ADD and ADHD medication, right? So low pregnenolone matches trouble concentrating, trouble focusing, trouble with memory. All of these are things that we see in women when their progesterone drops.
Okay.
So we'll see it in the the sort of the teenage population because their hormones are irregular. We'll see it in our highly stressed 20 and 30-year-olds. And then we see it very dramatically in women going through perimenopause and menopause because those levels have fallen quite a bit. And those are women that come in like, what just happened? I could run meetings, I could start businesses, and now I can barely get through a sentence, We did check an AMH on you, not because we're trying to get you pregnant, but because it's actually an androgen. So when AMH levels are too high, then we know we're dealing with sort of that androgen profile. Yours is okay. So that looks good. And your vitamin D is above 50, which is sort of my baseline requirement. So that's looking pretty good as well. So I think what I learned from this, I learned a lot about you from this panel. I think your thyroid is at risk. I feel like your progesterone is normal. Your progesterone is low, your pregnenolone is low, but your testosterone and DHT are high. So the question is the low libido simply a progesterone deficiency? And that's the issue because you may not be getting, progesterone also mediates how much deep restful sleep you're getting, and you're just not getting into a fully rested state. Is that what's happening here? Or do you need more help with inflammation? Like those are the two directions that we could go in, and would that indirectly improve your libido? Now, in the short course of things, there are so many sort of supplements for libido. There are also peptides for libido now. So and there are medications, of course, for libido as well. So I don't know if you've tried just going on maca and seeing if that helps you, because that indirectly helps the hormones too. So that could be something we could do to see if that had an effect for you. And then making sure you're getting enough protein and getting that'll sustain your blood sugar, keep that stable. All of that may too indirectly help you with libido. Okay?
Yeah, I do feel like, again, sorry, Jack, I do feel like I have felt better since I started taking DHEA, just because I have, part of it too is just I'm so exhausted or was feeling so exhausted all the time. I'm like, there's just, can't, there's nothing.
That goes back to kind of what I was saying, in my experience working with women. And you're a classic example. Most women come in thinking their testosterone is off if their libido.
Yeah, that's what Google. That's what
you're going to think.
Yeah.
But your testosterone's not off.
Okay.
And the risk of having overly exaggerated levels of testosterone and things like that. There's there's side effects to all of that. So that's not your story. I feel like yours is more caught up in the energy issue, right? Adrenal fatigue, sluggish thyroid, low progesterone, low pregnenolone, low DHEA, which you're now correcting. If you focus there, does the libido start to wake back up?
And then talk to me about what are things that people can do if they have low progesterone like I do in nutrition or supplements, or what are natural things that you can do that help support that?
Definitely. And low progesterone is probably the most common pattern, probably hits every hormone shift that we talked about, teens all the way through menopause and beyond. But remember, the reason I think progesterone is dropping so early is because we don't have good gut health and we don't get enough healthy fat, because cholesterol is the building block of hormone and also the building block of progesterone. So one of the key things you want to do is make sure you're getting those fats in. So I would do like a tablespoon of olive oil every day. You could also a couple times a week add in about a half a teaspoon of ghee or coconut oil. We need that fat to build hormones.
So I put MCT oil in my smoothie.
Okay.
Is that enough?
That helps.
Okay.
That helps. I still would add the tablespoon of olive oil as
Okay.
well. I think I would add that in too. So that's one rule. Get more fat in your system. The second is you can add foods that indirectly boost progesterone. So sweet potatoes and yam are one. We know that pumpkin seeds and sunflower seeds are another. So that sometimes indirectly helps to boost them as well. And then I think as a part of this whole food conversation, keeping in mind that the healthier your gut is, the less processed and kind of inflammatory foods you've taken gluten out, all of that is going to make a difference just from a food standpoint. And then moving on, magnesium improves progesterone production for sure. And then we also know there are herbs like chasteberry is one that
I take Vitex. Yeah.
Vitex is a great one that improves progesterone production as well. So those are some of the ones I would start with if you're trying to boost progesterone naturally.
Okay.
And I think I would begin there.
Okay.
For sure.
So you mentioned seeds, which was one of the questions that I had for you. Seeds and oil cycling.
Yep.
How much do you recommend it? Is it actually a real thing? What is it? Like, can you tell us all about that?
So seed cycling is kind of around this idea that, again, we have 4 weeks. Each week we're kind of in a different phase when it comes to our menstrual cycle. And we can define it by kind of the hormones, honestly. So phase 1, your estrogen's nicely coming up. That's the week you need probably more fiber. Doing like more nuts like almonds and things like that is super helpful. The second week, you're starting to level off a little bit. And then by the 3rd and 4th week, those numbers are all starting to go back down. So seed cycling is this idea that you can nourish the body when it needs it, right? When it's in a depletion state, using things like sunflower seeds and pumpkin seeds indirectly boost progesterone levels. Ironically, those both also have some zinc and magnesium and even a little bit of vitamin E in there. So indirectly, they're giving you the nutritional benefit too. Whereas at other times of the month, you don't necessarily need those seeds. You can use something else. So there is something to it for sure. I think it takes a while before you see clinical benefit. Like it may take you a few cycles. And in general, with any of these things that we're talking about, you probably need 3 cycles to understand where you're going to land and where you're going to kind of settle out to.
Okay.
For sure. So
Good
keep
to
that
know.
in mind too.
Yeah, I have done seeds and oils for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm like dead on it and I make sure I'm doing it every day, I
Right.
do feel like there's
makes
a
a
difference.
difference, yeah.
Even if it's just the mental energy of like, I am doing something to support my cycle right
Right.
now by taking a spoonful of seeds, that has really helped.
Yep.
And it's one of those, like, it's so simple. And I just feel like, what? But I thought it was worth asking you because I'm like, what if this is just like an internet rumor? And
No, it has a role. Its role may be exaggerated maybe a little bit, but it definitely has a role.
Okay.
And you brought something up a couple of times, and I probably should address it. Like you talked about the box breathing and your anxiety, and you talked about just the art of taking something and how much is that really helping you. And all of that counts because the more we look at research, there was a really interesting study where, a woman had a multiple personality disorder, right? So three different personalities in the same physical body. But because each personality had a different set of emotions, she manifested with different physical symptoms in every body.
Wow.
So one personality had like anxiety and something else. Another personality had joint pain. Another personality had something. So it's just the power of like our emotional and mental well-being on how it manifests physically.
Yeah.
It's huge. So if box breathing and you being able to flip the emotional rhythm and the pattern of, I'm caught in this web and therefore I'm going to have anxiety. And if you're able to break it and flip it and come out of it, then yes, absolutely, that works.
Yeah.
That absolutely works.
Yeah.
And same with the seeds. If taking the seeds, from a nutritional and from a hormonal standpoint is balancing things, but it's also giving you this input of you are able to care for yourself, then that synergistic effect works. And I think that's the reason we have a failing medical system, because a lot of what works is this relationship. The ability to tell you This is how to care for yourself. This is how to nurture yourself, to be that mirror back to you and say, okay, you're doing the right things. You're like, go, like we're your cheerleaders, you know? But when you take that relationship out and you monetize it or you limit it to a screen, right, in the telemedicine world or the telehealth world, or you try to volumize it by just like running people through in 5-minute, 10-minute visits, then that magic goes away, you know? And so I didn't want to gloss over that before we moved on to anything else, for sure, because I think it all counts.
Yeah.
So. Okay, you did this one as well.
Yes, I did.
Now, this is not necessarily hormonal. This was a nutritional test that we did on you looking at functional medicine concepts.
Great.
Okay? The world of functional medicine gets deeper into prevention, really wants to understand like the pathology and the physiology and all this other stuff. And then from there, we manage you. I already have it kind of running in my head like a plan where, okay, we need to optimize her progesterone, we need to track her thyroid, we need to continue to support adrenal fatigue, and then we probably need to help her metabolize the androgens a little bit better, and you need pregnenolone, right? I've got that list going. Now we get into these ideas. So this particular test, and there are many tests like it, this is not the only company necessarily that does this type of test, but is testing what I call, they have 4 down. I'll add inflammation to it. But these 5 functional medicine concepts that I feel like everybody should understand. Now, these are not things you need to test every 3 or 4 months, but maybe at least every year or every 2 years, and just understand where you fall. So one is oxidative stress. That's the energy within your cells.
Okay.
Talked a lot about energy today. There's outward energy, there's inward energy, there's cellular energy. Oxidative stress is talking about cellular energy.
Okay.
Making sure they're all getting enough oxygen. It's talking about the mitochondria, which are the powerhouse of your brain and your muscles, allows you to do a marathon, allows you to focus, do everything that you're supposed to do. And then also test your chemical exposure or your toxic load. That's a big one nowadays because our environment is more polluted than it's ever been. So each of us have a different sort of ability to withstand and hold on to toxins. You and I are probably different there. We need to understand what your threshold is. And then the last one is all about methylation. I might have talked about this last time, but methylation, again, is this process by which we break things down, lowers inflammation when it's working correctly. But many people have a gene called MTHFR that inhibits their ability to break things down, to detox, to do all this other good stuff. So this test checked all of that for you with all these different markers. It found your weaknesses as being in the categories of oxidative stress,
Okay.
meaning every cell's not getting the oxygen it needs, not getting the energy it needs, right? And in the category of toxic exposure, meaning you might be carrying a higher chemical load than we would like. Okay, it gets more specific. It looks at all the different nutrients. So, for example, you're running low in some of the B vitamins. And I think we might have talked about this last time too.
Yeah, I saw that on because I take B12 specifically. I have gotten the note to take B a lot and took a B complex.
Yeah.
And I felt there was something in it that
Didn't suit you.
Yeah, and there were so many things on the back, everyone I was finding. So all of that to say, I just got B12 specifically based on no doctor's recommendation, just my own idea.
Okay, got it.
So that's the only B I take.
Okay.
So that might be why.
So B12, you look good.
I bet.
That number looks great, but it's the other Bs that are getting neglected. And the reason they're important is because they're a part of these hormone pathways, along with magnesium, right? So we can talk about finding you a methyl B that is gentle. We have one in the practice. There are also some liquid Bs too that are like more, they have more of the B1, B2 or B1, B6 where you're running low, but it looks like you need some support there. Magnesium. So I picked it up, remember, in the lab core, and it's showing up here too as being low normal.
Okay.
All right. So your magnesium is definitely one where we can win. And then your gut, it looks like you're needing digestive enzymes, you're needing probiotics. Are you already on some of those things now?
I don't take probiotics.
Okay. It's just saying your gut could use more support. Now, you've also gone off gluten.
Right.
So things may change.
Okay.
And they may change for the better. Okay. The other thing on here too, remember one of your issues was your cells not getting enough oxygen. So glutathione is low, and that's a potent antioxidant. Vitamin A and vitamin C are a little bit low.
Okay.
Your alpha lipoic acid is a little bit low as well. So you need a lot more antioxidant support.
Okay.
Now, as a marathon runner, one of the things, do you have another one coming up?
No, not until the end of the year.
Okay.
I have some half marathons, but
Marathons.
that's not.
So one of the things I like doing for my athletes is you guys actually do some IV vitamin therapy. You do vitamin C IVs, or you do vitamin C with glutathione, maybe pre-race for a few weeks or pre-event for a few weeks to really tank you up and plump up your mitochondria so that you're feeling, not only that you're feeling good, but cellular, like when we get down to the cellular level, we're doing the right things for the body.
Okay.
All right, moving on. We talked about the B's. I don't think we need to go back into that. Magnesium we talked about. We talked about the gut. All right. Let's see. Toxic exposure.
Yeah. What is this?
So this is measuring a couple of things specifically. This is measuring something called MTBE, which is a derivative found in gasoline. And it's measuring styrene, which is actually found in a lot of plastics. For whatever reason,
Weird.
your body's holding on to that stuff.
Crazy.
But this is where the connection comes. It could be because you don't have good oxidative stress. You don't have enough oxygen within each cell. You're in stage 3 adrenal fatigue, right? Or were. And therefore the body does not have the bandwidth to move these chemicals out.
Okay.
Okay. So when we're trying to treatment plan you without going crazy, DHEA comes first. Deep, consistent sleep comes second.
Okay.
Then, and I'll write all this out for you at some point, but then taking like pregnenolone, a little bit of progesterone, keeping your holy basil, that's probably next. And then supporting your body to detox needs to be a part of that plan. Okay.
So just to understand, like, is there something common that people use that would be in my body, or maybe it's left over from something? Like, how
I think
are
it's
those
in the environment and you're not able to
process it?
Okay. That's what
Got
I think is happening. People ask me that all the time. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that you're doing anything wrong. It's just that whatever mix of genetics, gut, liver, health, and detox stuff that you've got going on, you're not moving it through.
Okay.
Like you and I could go to I have pretty decent detox genetics. I will sometimes get a little bit low in glutathione, but like we both go to the same environment. You may store more than I do for whatever reason. Okay. All right, let's see. So lots of numbers on here.
Yeah.
I always say this is the gut box. This is the brain box. This is the mitochondrial box. This is the toxicity box. So a little bit with your gut, but your gut's not terrible. You are overgrowing one particular strain is a high DHPPA, which sometimes does go with cognitive stuff, with being more sensory. If your apathy that you described to me earlier does not lift, then we would revisit. And that's the other thing. We don't have to act on every single thing, right? This is a journey, right? We want to do a few things, see how far we get you, do a few more things. Sometimes that's enough. Everything shifts, But we are picking up on a little bit of bacterial imbalance in the gut. We are picking up on the B vitamin issue, triggering an imbalance in your serotonin, which could explain the anxiety. And then we're picking up on the detox or the inability to detox efficiently. Everything else, oxidative damage, oxalates. I don't know if you guys have been talking about those very much. Those look pretty good. And then your amino acids, actually, you could use more protein. How are you doing with protein?
I feel like I'm doing really well, but maybe I need more. I mean, I think I have protein at every meal, but maybe I need more, like in terms of the amount that I'm eating.
Maybe just, especially if you're exerting more.
Yeah.
One of the fundamental rules of stabilizing adrenal fatigue is increasing your protein.
Okay.
So,
what's your favorite way to tell people to do that? Like just more?
Whatever they can do.
Okay.
Like I mean, I can tell you what I do.
One more egg.
Maybe one more. Yeah. There's so many little hacks. Like you can add an egg, if you're eating meat, add a few slices of turkey bacon, add a protein smoothie, use your seeds and nuts because they have a lot in them too. But wherever you can start to add a little bit more in.
I love, like, for me, I'm always so pumped by advice that's nutrition based.
Yeah.
Because, like, we're going to eat anyway.
Right.
So if you just sort of figure out the right equation for that.
For you. For you, I think, well, we'll do one more thing before we put it all together. Okay. So that's the end of this.
Fabulous.
Do you have any questions about this particular?
No,
do you understand kind of like the concepts? I feel like you're a teacher. Do you understand
I
the
know,
concepts?
I do. I love this. Are you kidding?
Oh my God. But anyhow, so this one can sometimes make head spin in the exam room because it's a lot of big words and stuff like that. sometimes I'll say, hey, you're doing this more for me because I know what journey to take you on.
Exactly.
Exactly. All right, let's do one last thing.
Okay.
And then we're going to try to tie all of this together. Can you stick your tongue out for me? Okay. Liver meridian. Let's do it one more time. Okay, definitely. All right. So when we are thinking about you and we're going to take data and we're going to merge it with what we know about Eastern and Western medicine.
Yes.
Here's how it comes together. All right, you ready? All right, your Chinese medicine diagnosis, liver meridian imbalance.
Okay.
So again, the liver, remember we've talked about before, responsible for moving things through the body, holds our emotions, holds grief and anger and all these different things. So it gets bogged down when there's a high chemical load, when there's a high emotional load, all of that. If we stayed in the lane of Chinese medicine, they would do a lot of sort of liver balancing on you, whether that's acupuncture or cupping or giving you certain herbs like dandelion tea or milk thistle. Moving on from that, in Ayurveda, your pitta, which is that go-getter, right? Like you're going to get things done. You're athletic. You have a list. You're going to cross it off. But they predict the first thing that's going to crash on you is usually your gut. Okay, so we've got liver meridian, we have gut dysfunction, and then we can extrapolate from just those two patterns without even having this data and know that you're someone who's going to be prone to high cortisol, low progesterone, and estrogen dominance, and we have to watch your thyroid. I would have known all of that without all this data. Now the data has just proven it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how this is merged together, and that's how we can really have this toolbox where we just keep walking through things. So now if I was creating a treatment plan for you, which I will, and I'll type it all out for you and send it to you. But your diet, increase protein, right? Increase your seeds and your nuts because that's going to help us to indirectly increase protein, but also increase your healthy fats. And then make sure you're eating every 4 hours or so. Because when
Can I ask this is a very silly technical question, but when you said olive oil, do you mean like literally do a spoonful of olive oil?
Yeah,
Okay.
you don't have to drink it straight from the spoon, but put it on your vegetables
Salads
or put it on
okay.
something.
Okay, great.
Sorry,
Sorry, that was a weird moment to interrupt.
No,
I was like,
and
I will do exactly what you tell me.
No, that's okay. And then with the adrenal fatigue, you don't want to be doing intermittent fasting. People ask me all the time, should I be intermittent fasting, blah, blah, blah. When folks are in adrenal fatigue, the way you are and you're getting better, you don't want to intermittent fast because the blood sugar needs help staying stable. The other way, let's say somebody listening is like, well, I can't do that cortisol test. I don't want to spit in a tube or whatever their rationale is. The Oura Ring or the Fitbit are great little tools because they're measuring an HRV or heart rate variability. And if your HRV is low, if it's kind of under 40 or so, you're probably in adrenal fatigue. So that's another cheat sheet hack way of testing all that stuff. Cool. All right. So your diet, line that out, right?
Protein, healthy fats, seeds, nuts. Yeah.
You got it. Okay. So that's your diet. Your supplements, if we're going to go into the supplement world, definitely want to keep you on Vitex. Definitely want to keep you on the DHEA, but I would add pregnenolone.
Okay.
I would add a gentle B, and we have a few that we can talk to you about. And then I would change or increase your magnesium.
Okay.
Those to me are your 5.
Cool.
Okay, that we need to stick with. Sometimes I'll leave patients right there and see how far I can get just doing that. But if that's not enough, we add the progesterone.
Okay.
Okay. So progesterone either 3 days a week or we do it just the week before your cycle and see if that kind of carries you all the way home. Now, life is what life is. It's a journey. We have ups and downs and twists and turns. Things like IV vitamin therapy, like optimizing vitamin C and glutathione and things like that, that's when those things play in. So pre-marathon, post-marathon, pre-surgery, post-surgery, right? Or if you're like traveling all over the world and you know you're going to be on a million planes, doing some of those type of things before and after. Because we know from your chemistry now that your cells need more oxygen, right? And anything that's going to deplete it is going to make them shrivel. And as they shrivel, then that's going to speed you down that aging highway. So anything you can do to plump it back up is going to be beneficial. Okay. Right. So that's kind of how I do an overarching sort of plan for you.
Great.
But, I talk a lot in the book about find your dominant hormone pattern. I think we answered that today, right? It's adrenal fatigue and low progesterone.
Yeah.
Those are your dominant.
I've never thought about the low progesterone. I've always thought estrogen dominant. So even in my own research, I'm never looking up what to do to boost progesterone. I'm always looking, how do I manage?
Right.
Because in my mind, I'm like, oh, my body's producing so much estrogen.
Right.
So that was a big
shift.
breakthrough
Yeah.
today.
And that's not what we're seeing on, and it could have been you. and we've talked about this before, as women, we shift and change all the time, right?
Totally.
So it could have been you maybe 10 years ago, but that's not what I'm seeing on everything that we've reviewed today. And so for you, it's not about breaking up estrogen and depleting estrogen more. It's more about balancing out the progesterone.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so pumped.
Yay!
Oh my gosh, I'm such a nerd. So we actually put sort of a poll out to the audience on social and got a bunch of questions for you. Could I ask you those?
Of course.
I have one before we jump into that I'm just curious about. Because I've noticed this when I do a marathon, any sort of like big physical challenge that I do, I get super bloated.
Yeah.
And I was just curious as to why.
I can explain.
Like it takes like a week for my stomach to stop looking like I'm 4 months pregnant.
It's the cortisol spike.
Okay.
So anytime we're stressed, cortisol levels go up. It will make the stomach bloat because it shifts the microbiome. What we weren't able to pull out on here, and I'm curious, I mean, we'll continue to watch and see what your body does, but sometimes on some women, the spike in cortisol increases yeast or candida in the gut, and that's the bloating.
Yeah.
So then we put them on a particular probiotic to bring the yeast load down, or herbs that help to block candida, more digestive enzymes, those type of things for that stressful period of time, and then they go back to their regular regimen after that.
Perimenopause question. These are in no particular order.
Okay.
How to keep energy up. So probably someone who had maybe is having a similar experience
Like you,
that I just
right?
had.
Yeah.
So hopefully her question actually got answered already. Maybe get some blood work done.
Definitely.
So that we can know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can give her 3 quick hacks: protein, B vitamins, and then let's make sure you're prioritizing self-care.
Okay.
Like, let's try that.
Well, so when you say, is there like a number we should be aiming for when it comes to how much protein we should be taking in each day?
Yeah. I've noticed when I'm treating patients, I'm doing all the math out, I'm averaging about 70 to 80 grams for most women. Now, if I have...
That's actually a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
But if I have actually, you might even need to be higher. But if I have a super athletic woman, it's skewing higher, and if I have somebody that, has got a ton of weight to lose, sometimes I'm going higher too. But I'm noticing that's where I land. And I think I'm landing there because I'm calculating about 0.6 to 0.8 grams per pound roughly. Now, I know there's a lot out there about, a gram per pound. That is a lot.
So much protein.
That is a lot. And it's so hard to do and so unrealistic. But I think that's really for people who are trying to put on a ton of muscle or trying to like shred, like they're trying to do the extreme, right? But for most of us that are just trying to feel good and look good and stuff like that, I feel like that's a healthy place to be.
So for me, you tell me if I'm wrong, when I wanted to understand how much protein I was taking in, I think last summer, and I just got an app that like tracked food, and I was kind of bummed at the end of the day because I was like, it was so much lower than I thought.
It's hard.
It's really hard.
Yeah.
But if you at least know where you're at, you can understand kind of where to aim for.
Totally.
So do you tell people to get an app, or how can they be aware of how much protein they're taking in?
Definitely. Well, I mean, there's so many great apps. There's, MyFitnessPal, Lose
I
It.
think
There's
that's
so
what I
many.
used,
There's so many that you can use and track yourself. I think people that are patients of our practice, we provide them with a lot of resources and some nutrition support so that they have an understanding of where they're landing. And I can usually eyeball, a diet plan real quickly and know where people are. But yeah, the apps are helpful. That's probably your best resource. And honestly, you don't need to do it for very long. I don't know how long you did yours, but
not that long.
Exactly. I don't think you need, I think if you take like 3 days and just calculate it out and see where you are, then you very quickly know kind of where to land. Like 1 egg is 7 grams, right? A traditional protein smoothie with 2 scoops of protein powder is about 20 grams. A chicken fillet, like the standard size, is about 20 to 30 grams. Same with the salmon fillet. Your hamburger patties, depends on the size, but a big one is a full 30-ish, almost 30, 35 grams of protein. So like once you know some of those general rules, you can start to eyeball things and know where you're landing on any given day.
Okay. All right. So more protein. Wait, it was more protein, B
vitamins, and then schedule self-care.
Yeah.
That perimenopause time, everyone's busting it. Schedule that downtime, because what I'm trying to do is get the cortisol to come down without yet another something to take, right? So if we can get cortisol to come down, then we know we're going to sleep more deeply, and you'll then be able to handle kind of whatever's next. But of course, get everything checked. What if like we're way off in left field? We don't know what's going on with her, and her thyroid's doing something. You know what I mean? But it is important to get everything checked.
Well, it's worth saying too, just from my woo-woo perspective, we hear the term self-care so often. And another way to look at that is like, what feeds your spirit?
Yes.
Like what, because it's different for every single
different.
person.
Yeah.
And if you know those things that feed your spirit, like mine are simple pleasures in life. A great slow cup of coffee, looking at the backyard or watching my kids play. I know it's cheesy, but like sitting on a heating pad, not cheesy, that's not the word, weird. My obsession with my heating pad is like everyone in my family is like, what's wrong with you? I recently found a heating pad that's like a full body size. I slept on it last night, you guys. It was the highlight of my
I'm
freaking
right there with
life.
you. I love it.
But like beautiful pajamas, just the simple things in life that if you know it's your thing, that when you're doing it, you slow down enough to go like, I'm doing this thing for myself right now. I organized my jewelry last night. It made me feel really
so
good.
Right? I was so happy when I did that last week. I was
so self-care isn't always like, oh, I get to go to a spa and get a facial.
Right.
It's like whatever makes you feel fed.
Totally. I couldn't agree with that more.
So next question, how to stop weight gain. Again, we've kind of touched on this, but if someone is gaining weight, and it's sort of that feeling of like, wait, nothing's changed,
Right.
but I'm bloating. This is a sign that you need to speak with your doctor, I'm assuming.
Totally. But yes, if you're gaining weight, if you don't know why, you can't put your hand on it or your finger on it, then get the stuff checked. Again, what if you're having a big hormone shift? Now, the problem is conventionally when you go in, right now there's such a push to, okay, you're gaining weight, take this, right? So... And you can do that, but that's still a short win. It's not a long win. If you want the long win, get your numbers checked and really understand how your body's shifting so that you can shift and change. One of the reasons I am stressing protein so much, I mean, I don't know how many years I went by and didn't eat or, ate till later. I mean, the team would make fun of me. They're like, we didn't see you eat today. I'm like, I'll eat later. It's fine. Could maintain my weight just fine doing that. But I crossed a certain threshold at which now that actually was doing more harm than good. And so I now need protein, right? So you have to educate yourself about where you are to be able to adapt your style of eating and then prioritize that, So.
Absolutely. How to advocate for yourself if your doctor says it's just stress?
Yeah, that's a tough one. So we're trying to change things. I do think there's so many options today, whether there are lab testing options, doctor options, different ways for you to dive in and dig into this information. I write about it a lot in the Hormone Shift, where you could literally write your own lab order and go get it from a LabCorp request. You don't have to have a medical provider, and you can kind of see what's going on. But I think pairing with somebody who is going to dive into your health. I think that's, when I first started talking about the book, I talked more about pairing with somebody who aligns with you and all this other stuff. I think you just need a partner. And a partner, like any other partner, is going to go deep. They're not going to swim in the shallow waters with you, right? They're going to be willing to do the work with you. So that's who you need to find to be a part of your medical team.
Yeah, that's so important. Are there certain keywords that you would say they should Google? Is it like asking friends? How do you even find a doctor?
Definitely. So, I can always say that those of us in the integrative medicine space, holistic medicine space, functional medicine space, we already think this way. We're already thinking a little bit deeper, right? So you usually have a better bet there. Beyond that, I think it's ask your network. You can also Google and go onto the Integrative Medicine, University of Arizona program in Integrative Medicine. They have a list of graduates there. The Institute of Functional Medicine has a list of graduates as well. So there are places where you can go look, for sure. But I think it's, asking around who's had a good experience with different doctors or not, and how you're going to get this information. But I don't want anyone to feel like they're hitting a wall. And then obviously we have a huge team in our clinic. And if they're open to seeing one of our providers, they do virtual. We're opening in LA as well, in New York. So, we are always an option if it's the right fit for somebody. But I feel like there are a lot of great practitioners out there. There are a lot of great people out there. It's just, again, trying to find them and match them to you.
If you're on birth control, do you still go through all 4 phases of a cycle?
Yes, you do. Absolutely. All birth control is doing is either trying to mimic that and shutting yours down, but you are still having some, maybe not to the same level, but you're still having some of those same patterns.
How do I balance my hormones right after having a baby?
Ooh, I love this question. I feel like this is such a neglected audience. So I had a patient, I have to share the story. I had a patient come in last week who I've been seeing since she was a teenager, and now she's a mom. And so, it's been fun to watch her on this journey, but she's got Hashimoto's thyroiditis.
Oh, wow.
And she started crying and not feeling good, super weepy, went in for her postpartum appointment, tried to describe this to her doctor, was also upset about her weight. She said her hair was falling, like all these symptoms. And the doctor was like, I think it's just a part of the postpartum period, well, here's the anti-anxiety that you can take until we get you through this. I promise it'll pass. She got in to see me. I was super excited to see her, saw pictures of the baby, all this other stuff. She describes this to me. I'm like, we probably need to check your thyroid. Like, what if it's shifted because you're now postpartum? And sure enough, her thyroid had shifted. It was completely out. We needed to rebalance her. And so that was the root of what was going on with her. So for the postpartum community, when we talk about that period of time, it's a time of depletion. It's a time where the body's been stripped of nutrients, of hormones, and so much more, even emotional kind of stability. And so you have to adopt the sort of Chinese concept of repletion, right? Build the body back and build it back better, right? Not to steal anyone's slogans, but we've got to sort of, think about, okay, more protein, more fat. Let's rebuild that gut lining. You may need amino acids like glutamine to do so. You probably need things like adrenal adaptogens, B vitamins, all of these things that replenish and nourish the body. That's what keeps us out of postpartum depression.
Gosh, what you're saying is so obvious. And never one time in any of my pregnancies and postpartum did I ever think, other than taking iron because I was conscious I had lost a lot of blood, I never thought that I needed to replenish my body. And of course you do.
Of course you do.
Like, I was in such survival mode of just like, stay alive, keep this baby alive. And then there's another one and another one that, of course, I mean, I don't know why this is blowing my mind so much. And I almost have like sadness for that younger version of me.
Me too.
I was like
know.
having Starbucks and like just, trying to like keep myself awake. I wonder if I'm sure I still took prenatals, but I hope someone heard this today who really needed that.
It's an empty space.
Yeah, it is.
It's like not talked about enough, and women suffer, but then their families suffer, like really big. And so I feel like, if we could support them and just help them to understand that there's nothing wrong with them. They're not less or weak because they're feeling. I mean, my husband to this day tells a story, which I don't remember. I have zero recollection of, but talks about the fact that after delivering our daughter, our first child, that I was so depressed that I didn't come downstairs for a month. And I'm like, I don't remember that. He goes, you didn't. He goes, my mom literally had to come bring you food, had to come do this stuff, because there was a lot of family drama on my side, and that was a part of the depression. But at the same time, like the way she and her daughters, adopted these Ayurvedic principles of repletion. I didn't know what they were doing. I was new in all of this, but it was bone broth-based soups, lots of bone broth type soups. It was all this high-fat food. It was forcing me to eat a couple times a day. It was all about rebuilding. And she kept saying like, you're weak, you're so weak. Like in her, they had different words for it, but it took me post having my kids and working with so many women to go back to that and understand that this depletion is real and can show up emotionally too. So I hope women listening understand that there's nothing wrong with them. They're not weak, but they're depleted. And if we can build them back, then they're going to be, off to doing. And what's even worse is with our delayed childbearing, right? Most of us having children later. What women are doing now is it sounds like you did this, like well, I did this too. What am I talking about? I have a 16-year-old and a 15-year-old, but it's the whole like back to back to back to back to back kids, right? You don't do that traditionally. Usually you want about 18 months to 2 years to recover before you do it again.
Yes.
Nowadays, women aren't doing that. They're going straight through. And so that's really hard on the body. Now, does that mean you don't do it? No, I get the time crunch thing, but it means you have to care for yourself, even more. You need to do things. The same stuff I was telling you about pre-marathon, like go get an IV, make sure you're getting the highest quality, best supplements you can, pay a lot of attention to your food, make sure you're resting. These are all principles that become more important because we're doing it this way today versus, 50, 60 years ago.
If you're within the first year of having a baby, what are symptoms or signs that you could be experiencing that are a sign that you are depleted? Because I think we normalize so many parts of that. You're a new mom,
right?
You're not sleeping. And so you think everything's because of the baby. Like I'm thinking of a very dear friend who has her first baby, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to call her as soon as we're done to be like, what are you doing? Like, are you taking care of yourself? Because I've just never thought of this before.
There are so many signs and symptoms, and fatigue, deep. I'm not talking about fatigue like I'm tired, I didn't get a good night's sleep, right? I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about this deep to the bone fatigue where getting out of the bed and trying to get to that baby, that just seems like too much to do, right? So I would say like deep fatigue where you can't get through what you need to do through the day. I think that's one. I think secondly, there are a lot of soft symptoms. Those soft symptoms are going to be things like getting winded easily, going up and down stairs and getting super tired. I think having heart palpitations, right? That's another big one as well. I think having mood shifts. I think that's one to be very aware of. That's a big sign of depletion. Many women, or actually these are partners, will tell me, that their wives are like crying because they're not home or they're getting upset because whatever the reason is. A lot of times that's because she's so depleted and she's so wiped and physically exhausted. She needs any kind of mental or emotional support, and it's coming out with the wrong message and maybe in the wrong way, but chemically that's what's happening. So those are some of the things that you can look for sure.
Okay. That's so good. Ooh, okay. And I'll also call my girlfriend after we get off of this. Let's see. Oh, I'm assuming that they're asking this question because we talked about it the first time.
Okay.
But how to balance hormones when you're increasing your workouts, training more, or training for something big like a race?
Well, we kind of talked about it with you, right? So I think anytime you're ramping up sort of the athletic component, treat it like stress. The body's going to be in a state of stress. So increase your protein, make sure you're eating consistently, no crazy fasting or anything like that. And then really ramp up sort of your nutrients. So all your minerals you should be supporting. Again, B vitamins come into this equation as well. I think it's really important to add those into the mix too. And then sometimes the IV vitamin therapy is super helpful. Hormonally, what I like to watch is what's your thyroid doing, what's your cortisol doing, what's your progesterone doing. And oftentimes we will support women around those periods of time just during that time and then be able to take them back off when life stabilizes again.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This was incredible. Just out of my own curiosity, do you have any books that you loved about Ayurveda? Because I've read some, but I'm always fascinated by it. And like when I've read things, I'm like, oh, I really vibe with this. And I'd love to understand it better.
Let me send you. So Deepak Chopra has a lot of great books.
Vasant
Lad, I don't know if you've seen his work.
I don't think so.
He's been around for a little bit, but he has some great books and even an institute for Ayurveda that's interesting as well that you might want to check out. But those are two that I personally even turned to when I was trying to learn more on my journey. So I think those are the ones that come to mind very quickly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll check those out. That was just for my own thing.
Of
that
course.
wasn't a podcast.
Okay, awesome.
Dr. Taz, this is my favorite. I want to talk about hormones with you forever. I'm so excited for all the things to go on this journey. Just wanting to be the best sort of version of me that I'm able to be at this age. Again, for anybody who wants to learn more about you, hang out with you online, get the books, like
Yes.
tell the audience all the places they can find you.
Definitely. It's been an honor, by the way. And thank you for being so brave to let
Of
everyone
course.
see your lab
Oh
work.
my gosh,
and do
yeah.
all of this.
Well, because I'm hoping that
Yeah.
when people hear it, they're like, oh, I want to know what my brain section says, and I want to know what this, and
Right.
we have to normalize these conversations
Totally.
because like someone out there was like, oh my God, I thought it was just me. Like I have decreased sex drive, but I don't
Right.
want to tell anybody because that's embarrassing.
Right.
And no, like let's talk about it so that we can help each other.
Totally. And I think that as hopefully everybody's heard and watched as we've worked with you, I think the mission and my passion is really for each and every person to find the magic and the formula for them, because that ultimately is what's going to lead them to do the things that they were supposed to do. I mean, you just talked about it with your family, right? What a big change one little thing can make. And so that's the work that we continue to do. And there are many places to find me. You can hang out with me on Instagram, where it's little pieces of information that I'm throwing out there periodically. You can join one of my workshops. I'm actually doing a series of hormone workshops coming up on different topics to help women dive a little bit deeper.
And what is that? That's like a virtual
It's
thing?
virtual.
Cool.
That's all virtual. So we're doing one on hair loss and helping people understand their hair loss patterns, one on PCOS, and then a 4-week hormone boot camp. So that's all coming up this spring. And then in addition to that, I am busy in my practice. We have a busy team. It practices at Center Spring MD. We're opening here in LA and also in New York. And we have a big presence in Atlanta, but we have a virtual presence as well for folks that don't want to fly in. So if they want the dive that you did, like that very deep personalized dive, then that's probably their best opportunity for that.
Yeah,
But
and it's worth saying. So I did this. My boyfriend did this,
Yes.
and then I also did this for my 2 teenagers.
I know.
Yeah, so
I
we
know
did the
you-
whole, like
the whole
everybody who
family.
could get tested, we
that's
tested.
probably another whole episode of family and family health and things like that. But
We
I think
can do a
it's-
third after you meet with the teenagers.
There we go.
We can come back and talk about that.
There we go. There's so much. But no, it's a joy. It's a joy to be able to watch people on their journey. I'm on the journey with them. My body's constantly changing and shifting, but I know that there are answers for everything. So I really hate to see any of us sit back and take a back seat when we can be charging ahead and feeling amazing.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the time.
Yes,
Again.
of course. This was so great.
Yeah, we did it.